Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of our Health and Wellness series. In this inspiring discussion, our team at Medicare Hub Limited will be exploring a powerful message. Keep moving, no matter your health challenges. This mantra is a reminder that every small step counts, and that perseverance and resilience can help you overcome even the toughest obstacles. The next voice you will be hearing is that of our team at Medicare Hub Limited, who will be sharing their expertise, personal stories, and practical tips to help you stay motivated, focused, and committed to your health and wellness journey, no matter what challenges you may be facing.
Hey there. I'm willing to bet that you're the type of person who loves to learn and grow. And today, we're diving deep into something that I think impacts all of us. How to stay resilient, how to achieve our goals, even when we're facing health challenges.
Absolutely.
We've got some really great material here, focused on a lot of practical tools, small steps, progress over perfection, the importance of self-care.
I think what's so fascinating about this material is that it really emphasizes perseverance and resilience, not just as these buzzwords, but as real actionable skills that we can develop.
Let's jump right in with this idea of small steps. The sources really highlight how even those tiny actions can add up to big changes over time. Especially when you're dealing with health issues that might feel overwhelming at first.
Absolutely. And that ties in perfectly with all the research on habit formation. You know, we often think we need to make these huge sweeping changes.
But it's the consistency of small actions that really rewires our brains and leads to sustainable change.
It's like instead of trying to overhaul your entire diet overnight, you focus on just adding one more serving of veggies to your day. Small change.
Exactly.
But over time, big impact.
And one of the sources tells this really inspiring story about an individual who was diagnosed with a chronic illness. It would have been easy to get discouraged. But instead, they used this small steps approach to not only manage their condition, but become a powerful advocate for others.
So for our listener, let's get practical. Say you're struggling with fatigue from a health condition. How could this small steps approach help you make progress towards having better energy levels?
Well, instead of focusing on that daunting goal of getting more energy, which can feel abstract and kind of overwhelming, you might break it down into manageable steps.
Maybe it's committing to a 10-minute walk each day, even if it's just around the block. Or it could be as simple as swapping out one sugary drink for a glass of water.
It's about building that sense of accomplishment.
Precisely. Each small win fuels the motivation to keep going. And this individual that we were talking about, they really embody that. They faced setbacks, of course, but they kept adjusting their approach, finding what worked for them, and celebrating those small victories along the way.
Their story really highlights the powers of perseverance, which the sources also emphasize. It's that grit to keep going, even when faced with obstacles, that makes all the difference.
And what's interesting is that the sources connect this perseverance to having a growth mindset, which is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed rather than being fixed.
That's an interesting concept. How have you seen that growth mindset play out in people dealing with, say, chronic pain?
Well, instead of thinking, I'm stuck with this pain, there's nothing I can do, someone with a growth mindset might explore different pain management techniques. They might try new therapies, or they might find ways to adapt their activities to reduce their discomfort. They see the challenge as an opportunity to learn and find solutions rather than a dead end.
So instead of saying, I'll never run a 5K with this arthritis, you might think, what modifications or training can I explore to make that goal achievable?
Exactly. It's about focusing on what you can control and being open to new possibilities.
And this reminds me of another point from the sources. The importance of celebrating progress over perfection. It's so easy to get caught up in striving for this unattainable ideal.
Absolutely.
And that can actually be incredibly demotivating.
It's a recipe for burnout and discouragement, for sure.
Yes.
The sources suggest that when we celebrate progress, no matter how small, we create a more sustainable and enjoyable path toward our goals.
I can see how that ties back to the small steps idea. Instead of beating yourself up for not having a perfect workout, you acknowledge the fact that you showed up and moved your body for 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Progress, not perfection.
And this shift in mindset can be particularly helpful when dealing with health challenges. Instead of focusing on what you can't do, you celebrate the things that you can do, even if they seem small.
Like that individual that we talked about earlier.
Yes.
The one who became an advocate despite their chronic illness. I'm guessing they faced moments where they couldn't do everything that they wanted to do.
They did, but they found ways to adapt and adjust their approach, focusing on what was within their control. And by celebrating their progress, they kept that momentum going.
The sources also touch on the idea of reframing setbacks as opportunities for learning, which I think is so powerful, but can be hard to do in the moment.
It is.
Can you give us a specific example of how someone might reframe a health setback?
Sure.
Like, say they injure themselves and can't exercise the way they used to.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing that injury as a complete derailment of their fitness goals, someone with a resilient mindset might use that time to focus on other aspects of their well-being. Like their nutrition or their sleep. Or they might explore different forms of exercise that are compatible with their injury, like swimming or gentle yoga.
It's about turning that I can't into what can I do instead?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's about acknowledging that setbacks are a natural part of the journey. No one's path is perfectly linear. And those bumps in the road often lead to valuable insights and growth.
That's a great reminder.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding challenges altogether. It's about developing the skills to navigate them effectively.
Exactly.
And speaking of skills, one of the sources mentions some specific strategies for cultivating resilience. And I'm really curious to dive into those.
One that really resonated with me was the concept of mindfulness. It's about learning to pay attention to the present moment without judgment. And becoming more aware of our thoughts, our feelings, and our bodily sensations.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it actually helps build resilience.
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
When we're more aware of our thoughts and feelings,
yes,
we're less likely to be swept away by them.
Okay.
We can observe them without getting caught up in the negativity or the self-criticism.
Right.
That can often sabotage our efforts.
So instead of spiraling into a cycle of, I'm never going to get better thoughts, you can acknowledge those thoughts.
Yes.
Observe them, and then choose to focus on something more constructive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties back to the idea of self-compassion, which is another key strategy for cultivating resilience. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a good friend.
You know, I think a lot of people struggle with self-compassion.
They do.
It's easier to be kind to others than to ourselves.
It's definitely a practice. It takes conscious effort. But the sources suggest that when we cultivate self-compassion, we create a more supportive inner environment, which allows us to bounce back from setbacks more easily.
It's like having your own internal cheerleader.
It is.
Instead of an inner critic.
Yes.
That's a powerful image.
And that cheerleader reminds us that we're worthy of love and care, even when we make mistakes or face challenges.
And I'm guessing this self-compassion also helps us to avoid comparing ourselves to others.
Absolutely.
Which can be such a trap.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on social media.
Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
Right.
And when we're caught up in comparing ourselves to others, we lose sight of our own unique journey and progress.
So if someone is listening and they're thinking, okay, I want to cultivate more self-compassion, but where do I even start?
Yeah.
What's a simple, actionable step they could take?
I would say start with noticing the language you use when you talk to yourself.
Okay.
Are you being kind?
Right.
Understanding? Supportive?
Yeah.
Or are you being harsh, critical, and judgmental?
All right.
Simply becoming aware of those patterns is a great first step.
And then I'm guessing it's about consciously shifting that language towards something more compassionate, encouraging.
It's about treating yourself like you would treat a friend who's going through a tough time.
Right.
Offer yourself words of comfort, understanding, and encouragement.
And I imagine that also applies to how we respond to our bodies.
Yes.
Instead of criticizing ourselves for not looking a certain way, we can practice gratitude for all the things our bodies do for us.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Gratitude is another powerful tool for cultivating resilience.
We touched on gratitude a little bit earlier.
You did.
But I'd love to explore that a bit more.
Okay.
How does gratitude actually contribute to resilience?
Yeah.
Especially in the context of health challenges.
Well, when we focus on what we're grateful for, even amidst difficult circumstances, it shifts our perspective away from what's lacking or what's wrong.
Okay.
It helps us to appreciate the good things in our lives,
Right.
which can boost our mood,
Yes, sir.
reduce stress, and increase our overall sense of well-being.
And I imagine that can have a ripple effect, right?
It does.
When we're feeling more positive and grateful,
Yes.
we're more likely to take care of ourselves, make healthier choices, and approach challenges with a more optimistic outlook.
Absolutely. And there's actually research that supports this.
Oh, wow.
Studies have shown that practicing gratitude can have a positive impact on both mental and physical health.
Interesting.
It can improve sleep quality,
Okay.
reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, and even boost our immune system.
Wow. So gratitude isn't just some feel-good, fluffy concept.
Right.
It actually has tangible benefits for our well-being.
It does. And the best part is it's a skill that anyone can develop. It's simply a matter of making a conscious effort to notice and appreciate the good things in our lives, no matter how big or small.
So for our listener who might be feeling overwhelmed or discouraged by a health challenge, practicing gratitude could be a powerful way to shift their perspective.
Absolutely.
And boost their resilience.
Even something as simple as taking a few minutes each day to write down 3 things you're grateful for can make a big difference.
It's about training our minds to focus on the positive, even amidst challenges.
Yes.
And speaking of training our minds, one of the sources mentioned something called cognitive reframing.
Yes.
Which I'm really intrigued by.
Cognitive reframing is a powerful technique that involves consciously changing the way we think about situations. It's about challenging those negative thought patterns that can often hold us back and replacing them with more positive and empowering thoughts.
So instead of thinking, I'm such a failure because I skipped my workout today, you might reframe it as, I'm choosing to prioritize rest and recovery today so I can come back stronger tomorrow.
Exactly. It's about finding a more positive and constructive way to interpret the situation. And the more we practice this, the more automatic it becomes.
It's like building a mental muscle, right?
It is.
The more we exercise that muscle, the stronger it gets.
Precisely. And the sources suggest that cognitive reframing can be particularly helpful for managing stress and anxiety, which can be especially heightened when dealing with health challenges.
It makes sense. If we can reframe those stressful thoughts, we're less likely to feel overwhelmed and more likely to stay focused on our goals.
Exactly. And the beauty of cognitive reframing is that it's a portable skill.
Yes.
We can use it in any situation, not just those related to health.
So let's say our listener is feeling stressed about an upcoming doctor's appointment.
Okay.
How might they use cognitive reframing to manage that anxiety?
Well, instead of focusing on all the worst case scenarios that their mind might be conjuring up, they could reframe it as an opportunity to get more information about their health and discuss any concerns they have with their doctor. They could focus on the fact that they're taking proactive steps to manage their health, which is something to be proud of.
It's about shifting the focus from fear and uncertainty to empowerment and action.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can make a huge difference in how we experience those potentially stressful situations.
This has been such a rich conversation.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've covered so much ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the power of small steps, the importance of perseverance and a growth mindset, and how prioritizing self-care can contribute to resilience. It's really all about equipping our listener with practical tools
Absolutely.
that they can use to navigate the ups and downs of life, especially when facing health challenges. It's about empowering them to become the most resilient and unstoppable version of themselves.
I love that. You know, taking care of ourselves physically and emotionally. It really sets the stage for a more resilient mindset.
Yes.
And speaking of mindset, the sources emphasize this idea of shifting our focus from perfection to progress.
I think that's a huge one.
It is.
Especially in today's world where we're bombarded with images of like perfect bodies, perfect lifestyles, perfect everything.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in that.
It is.
I feel like you're constantly falling short.
It's a recipe for burnout and discouragement.
Yeah.
The sources suggest that when we celebrate progress, no matter how small, we create a more sustainable and enjoyable path toward our goals.
I can see how that ties back to the small steps idea.
Right.
Instead of beating yourself up for not having a perfect workout, you acknowledge the fact that, hey, I showed up, I moved my body for 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Progress, not perfection.
And this shift in mindset can be particularly helpful when dealing with health challenges.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on what you can't do, you celebrate the things you can do, even if they seem small.
Like that individual we talked about earlier.
Yes.
The one who became an advocate despite their chronic illness. I'm guessing they faced moments.
Oh, absolutely.
Where they couldn't do everything they wanted to do.
They did, but they found ways to adapt and adjust their approach.
Right.
Focusing on what was within their control.
Yeah.
And by celebrating their progress, they kept that momentum going.
The sources also touch on the idea of reframing setbacks as opportunities for learning, which I think is so powerful, but can be hard to do in the moment. Can you give us a specific example of how someone might reframe a health setback?
Sure.
Like say they injure themselves and can't exercise the way they used to.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing that injury as like a complete derailment of their fitness goals, someone with a resilient mindset might use that time to focus on other aspects of their well-being, like their nutrition or their sleep, or they might explore different forms of exercise that are compatible with their injury, like swimming or gentle yoga.
It's about turning that I can't into what can I do instead.
Precisely. And it's about acknowledging that setbacks are a natural part of the journey. No one's path is perfectly linear, and those bumps in the road often lead to valuable insights and growth.
That's a great reminder.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding challenges altogether. It's about developing the skills to navigate them effectively.
Exactly.
And speaking of skills, one of the sources mentions some specific strategies for cultivating resilience, and I'm really curious to dive into those.
So building on all these powerful strategies for resilience, one of the sources emphasized something we haven't touched on yet, the importance of social connection.
That's interesting because I think when we're struggling with a health challenge, it can be easy to isolate ourselves.
It can.
Maybe out of shame or feeling like people won't understand.
Yeah, it's a natural human tendency to want to withdraw when we're hurting. But the research actually shows that social connection is one of the most potent buffers against stress and adversity.
So it's not about pretending like everything is okay. Or putting on a brave face.
Exactly.
It's about having those authentic, supportive relationships. Where we can share our struggles and feel seen and heard.
And those connections don't have to be limited to close friends and family, support groups, online communities, even just connecting with other people who share similar health challenges can provide that sense of belonging and shared understanding.
It makes me think of that individual we discussed earlier.
Yes.
The one who became an advocate. I'm guessing connecting with others facing similar challenges played a role in their resilience.
I would imagine. So advocacy itself is a form of social connection.
It is.
It's about using your voice and your experience to make a difference. And that often involves collaborating with others, sharing resources, building a sense of community.
So for our listener who might be feeling isolated or alone in their health journey, what's the practical step they could take to start building those connections?
Well, it could be something as simple as reaching out to a friend or family member and letting them know what they're going through. It could be joining an online support group or attending a local meetup for people with similar health concerns. Even just something as small as striking up a conversation with someone at the gym or in a yoga class can plant those seeds of connection.
It's about taking those baby steps out of isolation and into a space of shared experience and support.
Exactly.
And I love how the sources emphasize that resilience isn't just about toughing it out on our own. It's about leveraging the power of connection and community.
Absolutely. We're wired for connection, and those relationships provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and support that can fuel our resilience in profound ways.
Yeah.
And this leads to another important point from the sources.
Okay.
The power of setting realistic goals.
I think this is where a lot of people stumble,
They do.
especially when it comes to health goals.
Yeah.
We set these grand, ambitious goals, and then we get discouraged when we don't see immediate results.
It's like setting yourself up for disappointment right from the start.
Right.
The sources suggest that breaking down those larger goals into smaller, more manageable steps is key.
It's that small steps philosophy again.
It is.
But applied specifically to goal setting.
Exactly. And it's not just about making the goals smaller. It's also about making them specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, so let's break that down for our listener.
Sure.
Can you give an example of how someone might set a SMART goal related to, say, improving their sleep?
Instead of setting a vague goal like sleep better,
Okay.
a SMART goal might be, I will go to bed by 10 p.m.
Okay.
and wake up at 6 a.m. each night, aiming for 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Starting tonight and continuing for the next 30 days.
So it's specific.
Yes.
It's measurable. It's achievable.
It is.
It's relevant to their overall well-being.
Yes.
And it has a clear time frame.
Exactly. And by setting those clear parameters, we increase our chances of success and avoid that feeling of overwhelm or discouragement that can come from vague or unrealistic goals.
And I imagine that sense of accomplishment we get from achieving those smaller goals can then fuel our motivation to keep going.
Absolutely. It creates a positive feedback loop where each small win reinforces our belief in ourselves and our ability to make progress.
You know, I've noticed this in my own life.
Yeah.
When I break down my goals into smaller chunks, it just feels much less daunting.
It does.
And I'm more likely to stick with it.
Right.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of patience and persistence, building resilience, achieving our goals. It's all a process.
Yes.
And there will be ups and downs along the way.
Right.
But by focusing on those small steps, celebrating our progress and drawing on the support of others, we can navigate those challenges and ultimately reach our destination.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listener will walk away with today?
I would say it's this.
Okay.
Resilience is not a fixed trait. It's a skill that can be learned and cultivated. It's about embracing those small steps.
Yes.
Shifting our mindset from perfection to progress. Prioritizing self-care and connection and celebrating every victory along the way.
I love that.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are resources available, people who understand, and a community ready to support you.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And I love how you emphasize that resilience is a journey.
It is.
Not a destination.
We're not a destination.
It's about those daily choices, those small shifts in perspective and behavior that over time add up to create a more resilient and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your day, consider what one small step you can take to nurture your own resilience. Whether it's reaching out to a friend, practicing gratitude, or simply taking a few deep breaths.
Great idea.
And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.